finding journal articles. And like I said, all of you have probably been given one or maybe two, or if you're lucky or unlucky, however you might look at it, several, a stack of 5 journal articles. That is not uncommon. I've seen students get slammed with 10 journal articles when they join a lab. So this is just the way it is. In case that you were only given one, or the articles you were given were so complex and hard for you to understand, I want to show you how to find alternative journal articles. So I guess before I start, I want to just kind of give a disclaimer that if you have, now that you have your UCLA Bruin Online account, your guest account, when you're off campus, which all of you are, you need to install the UCLA VPN to gain free access to these research articles, okay? So here is the link to how to download the UCLA VPN, or you can just Google search UCLA VPN. Again, you will need to use your BOL, your Bruin Online account that you created for that safety training course. Especially for the non-UCLA engineering students, you don't have a Bruin Online account, you had to create one. So use that guest account to be able to access the VPN. And if for whatever reason you're not able to download the VPN or access it, please let me know so I can help you troubleshoot that. Some of the papers are open access. They're available for free online, but some of them are not. And so you will need a VPN and have that UCLA Bruin student account. If for whatever reason your Bruin account doesn't work or you can't use the UCLA VPN, I suggest you use your home institution. So whatever university, college you're going to, they probably have a VPN. Basically, to access this, you have to be a student enrolled at a university or college. So as long as you have that VPN, you can access the journal articles that are not available for free and open source. Okay, so the first place that I recommend you start when looking for journal articles is start with your faculty website, right? So this is Professor Yongfeng Liu in the Chemical Engineering Department. You see his name right here. So if you're in Professor Christina Ferguli's lab, you would just go Google Christina Ferguli Research Lab. And almost every single faculty has a research lab website. This is kind of what it normally looks like. There's a homepage, a research, a people. So your graduate student, your daily lab supervisor should be here in the people. This is a great way to also learn who else is working in the lab. If there's other graduate students, other postdocs, other undergrads. And especially because you're working remotely, I highly recommend you reach out to these people and you try and meet with them and try and have Zoom social hours or social half hours, or have lunch on Zoom with them, where you just get to introduce yourself and talk to them and ask them questions. You want exposure to everybody in that research lab, not only your daily lab supervisor. So on that website, they should also have a link that says recent publications. Okay, so if you click on that, you will see a list of journal articles that they publish. So you should be looking for, specifically articles that your daily lab supervisor has published, because that's probably related to the research project that they're working on. Okay. So that is my first recommendation, is go to the lab website. Then there are 2 first inline sources where you can find research papers, and I'm going to talk about both of these. The first is the Google Scholar. So if you've never used Google Scholar, this is an invaluable resource for college students. So I'm going to show you how to look up stuff there. And then there's also Pubmed, which is kind of the national database of research articles, and I'll show you how to use both those inline sources to find articles. So let's start with Google Scholar. So, this is basically a paper search engine. That is the link to Google Scholar. It looks like this, right? And once you're in Google Scholar, you basically just do a search. You put in the name of your professor, or you can put the name of your graduate student, right? Your daily lab supervisor. So in this case, the sample we're using is Dean Ho, who is a faculty that one of my peer advisors in the undergraduate research program worked with. So you type in Dean Ho, and this is what should come up, okay? And there is a list, and then you can sort that list. You can sort by date, you can sort by relevance, you can include patents, you can include citations. So I highly recommend you click on both of those. There's also a way for you to create an alert which means you can automate this. So anytime a new paper by this professor or this student, this graduate student is published, you can get an email saying, hey, they just published a brand new paper. You should go read it. So if you fall in love with research and this is something you're going to do in the long run, highly recommend that you do that. You create those alerts. So you'll see a list, and it kind of looks like a Google search, right? You just see, like, here's the paper, the properties and application of nanodiamonds. You can see that it was cited 1,600 times. There are some related article links, and there's 15 versions of this paper. And you can see who published the paper. Then you can see a quick, three sentence description of it, and then a link to where it was published in nature.com, right? So so a couple things I want you to highlight. So there is a user profile. I highly, highly recommend you click on that user profile to see the profile of your faculty member and or your graduate student. I recommend you do both. Then here in the orange box here is, the actual link to the direct journal webpage for the paper. So you can click on that and it'll take you directly to the paper on nature.com. Okay, so if you click that first box, right, the blue box, if you click on that blue box, it will show you something like this. So it tells you a little description of Dean Ho. There you see a picture of him, the university that he works at, the different journals that he's published, and these are the areas of research that he does. So he does research in digital medicine, in artificial intelligence, in nanomedicine, in nanodiamonds, and nanocarbon. So this is all information you should really be looking at and learning about your lab. And then there's a profile here, right, that shows you, like, you can view all the publications by year. So 2012, how many total publications, how many citations. This is all really cool information that you should be learning. The first thing I recommend is you read recent papers, right? You want to see the most recent papers. So this, he hasn't published since 2012. Actually, no, this search shows from 2012, which is a little weird because there have been publications in 2019. So here are the papers. This is when it was published. And then number of citations is really, really important in the research world. So in general, a person becomes a world-renowned expert if their research has been cited, their paper has been cited more. So the more citations means that paper was more impactful, that somebody else, some other researcher in the world read that paper and said, man, this is really awesome work. This is really interesting. I want to continue this work and do research along these lines, right? I learned a lot from this and I think I have a new idea and I'm going to do a different research project based on this knowledge. So it's kind of like an accumulation of knowledge. And once people accept this as like, this is awesome work, this is good science, and they build on that, right? And then whenever they build on that research, they have to cite it. They have to reference and give credit to say, I got this idea from this person in this paper that they published. So the more citations, the more prestigious and the more important the paper is. So if you look at like Nobel laureate winners, their papers have been cited like, hundreds of thousands, multiple tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of times because their paper was so impactful to the field of research that, they got a Nobel laureate prize for it. Okay. All right. So let me move on. If you click on that paper, you should find this. This is citation tips, which is really, really important. This is one of the criteria we'll be using to grade your technical presentations, is making sure that all the content that you put on your slides, you cite properly, because you cannot put anything on your PowerPoint slide that is not your credit. So, you probably noticed that I've been citing some things here, let me back up here. Like this was cited here, credit to Lou. Right, see in the corner here. So that's one way of citing. Whenever you're citing an actual research paper content, you have to do proper citations. So this is, if you click on this little button here, these little quotation, it actually tells you how to properly cite it. So you can literally just copy paste this. Oops, sorry. It shows you the MLA format, the APA, the Chicago, the Harvard, Vancouver. It doesn't really matter to me which method you use on your presentations. What matters is that you're consistent, that you use one method and you use it throughout the entire PowerPoint presentation. So you can literally just copy paste this and put it at the bottom of your slide, wherever you copy pasted content from these papers. So this is really important when you're writing a research paper. This is important when you're creating a bibliography. And this is important whenever you're publishing research, okay? So you're gonna have to properly cite and acknowledge the information you got from other sources. Otherwise, it's plagiarism, and it's really a big no-no in the research world. So I wanted to show you how to do that on Google Scholar. Are there any questions about Google Scholar before I move on to Pubmed? Nope. Okay, cool. Let's get into Pubmed. So here's the website for Pubmed. It's ncbi.nlm.nih.gov, Pubmed. And again, this is basically pulling together a ton of different, it's like a national database of different sources of publications. And you see some of these sources down here, okay? So this is what the website looks like. So what you would do is basically, type in your graduate student or your faculty name. So we're going to use Dean Ho, just same example as the Google Scholar. And once you click that, again, you see article. Now, what's nice about PubMed is it tells you what article type it is. Okay, it tells you, the publication dates, and then you see a list, just like the Google one, where there's a list of the papers. Okay, and you can sort this list. You can sort it by most recent, and see there's a little drop down here. One thing I want to point out is I highly recommend you all find a review article. And I'll talk about the difference between a review article and a research article in the next couple slides. But I want to point out that there is a review option here on PubMed, and you definitely want to use that option. Okay, so a research paper, like what you would find on Google Scholar, is based on original research work. It reports original work that the graduate student or that research lab did. It has data collection and analysis, which is usually pretty complex. And then it also interprets the findings, right? It has data analysis. It says, here's the data and here's my analysis of those results. And in general, they're pretty complicated and difficult to understand. So this is not where you want to start. And usually the lab, this is what they give you. They give you a journal article, a regular research paper, which if for new students or new students who are new to the research area, I don't recommend you start with that. I recommend you start with the review paper. And the reason is because a review paper is based on other published works. It's basically like doing literature review. It summarizes all of the prior existing literature in the field, right? So it summarizes existing literature. There's really no data collection or analysis, right? Which is the hard part of reading these papers here. There's no original research that's reported. It's just a summary of the existing literature and the prior knowledge that's in this area. This is way easier to understand. So think of this like a chapter in a book that introduces a certain topic, right? A certain research area. So if you're struggling to read the research paper, I recommend you go and find a review paper of that research paper. And you can do that on PubMed like I just showed you how. And then you can read the review paper. That'll give you a lot bigger, better understanding of background information, of prior knowledge, so that when you read the research paper, you're like, oh yeah, I just learned that in the review paper. That makes sense now. So this should really facilitate your ability to decipher these very technical research papers.